Welcome. My name is Jonathan Sines, and I'm the president of Texas Values. Welcome to the Merry Christmas Texas celebration. I'm excited for you to be here with us today. Texas Values is a nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting faith, family, and freedom in the state of Texas. And so you're here today, and we're saying thank you for being a part of this important issue on behalf of our board and staff and over 7,000 supporters and subscribers across the state, 70,000, supporters and subscribers across the state that are part of our Texas Values family. We're glad that you're here. At this time, to start this event properly, I want to invite Pastor Steve Washburn, who is the pastor of First Baptist Pflugerville, to come up and lead us in prayer. And if you'll rise, please.
Thank you, Jonathan. Father God, we thank you for all those who've had any part in this. It's a shame, Father, that a law has to be passed in order to gain our children the freedom in schools to wish you happy birthday on your birthday. But you've told us in Proverbs chapter 10, verse 23, that this is very often the case. You've said that shameful conduct is a pleasure for a fool, as wisdom is for men of understanding. We thank you for the men of understanding, women of understanding and wisdom through whom you've worked to bring this law about. We thank you for the Merry Christmas Texas law, and we thank you for the Merry Christmas Texas project, about which you're going to tell us more, or Jonathan's going to tell us more in just a moment. So we thank you for this occasion. We thank you for the cause of this occasion. We ask for your blessings upon it. And we ask that you help other states here in our nation follow Texas' lead in enacting this kind of legislation. We pray these things in the great name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Washburn. And feel free to be seated. Our Merry Christmas Texas celebration today has two parts. In this room, we'll have an educational seminar where you're going to hear from Cynthia Story, who's a parent from the Katy ISD area, the west part of Houston, to hear about her experience and her children's experience. You're going to hear from Ken Mercer, State Board of Education member, and his experience on this issue. You're also going to hear from Justin Butterfield, who's a staff attorney with Liberty Institute, the largest religious liberty nonprofit legal organization in the country. Joining us shortly after he finishes his Skype session on the Merry Christmas law in Oklahoma, as they're introducing today that bill in Oklahoma, State Representative Dwayne Bohack, who is the author of the Merry Christmas legislation and law, is going to be with us. And his son, Reagan, who was an inspiration to this issue as well. In addition to that, I'm going to be talking about something that happened with Representative Pat Fallon, who could not be with us today because of the ice and some of the weather issues in the Frisco and North Texas area. The second part of our celebration is something I'm sure you'll enjoy as well. Downstairs in the Legislative Conference Center, we're going to have our Christmas party. So we're going to have Santa taking pictures down there, Christmas cookies, refreshments, a nativity scene. I think we even got a musician down there playing the saxophone, some lovely Christmas music. So we'd like for you to come, and if you need to come back later or you want to share it with friends, we'll be there until about 1 or 2 o'clock this afternoon. So let's go ahead and get started today on our educational seminar. Student gifts banned and singled out at a holiday party because of a reference to Jesus. The words Merry Christmas banned when sending cards to the troops in Iraq. The colors red and green banned because they might relate or be referenced to Christmas. And in addition to that, a holiday tree not allowed to be called a Christmas tree. These are issues that we've seen happen not in some other part of the country, but right here in our beloved state of Texas. The Merry Christmas Project is an effort to educate people about the Merry Christmas law that has come about because of these type of examples, many of which resulted in costly litigation to taxpayers because school districts either had a misunderstanding about the law or refused to follow the law when these issues and problems were brought forward. So after many years of litigation, one court case which is still ongoing that you'll hear about, the Merry Christmas law came about, as well as the Merry Christmas Project, to educate the over 1,200 school districts across the state about this new law, which is very simple in form. And it essentially, in one part, talks about educating people that whether you're a teacher, a parent, or administrator, or staff, it's okay to say Merry Christmas in the public school. If you want to exchange Merry Christmas greetings with staff, if students want to exchange those greetings, the law allows you to do this. In addition to that, there have been discussions about what type of symbols and things can be allowed when you have winter parties. This law makes it very clear if you want to have a Christmas tree, if you want to have a Santa, if you want to have a nativity scene, as long as it's balanced out between a secular symbol, if you will, and a religious, or two different religious items, it's allowed to do. School districts for too long have either wanted to or thought that they have to be speech police. The Merry Christmas law, we hope, puts an end to that. And at the end of the day, we hope it results in more school districts being educated on this and less school districts being naughty and more being nice. And with that, would like to introduce some of the folks here in detail about this issue. And before I do, I want to remind people, when you think about this issue, Christmas has been a federal holiday since 1870. This is not a new issue. It's become a part of our culture, the fabric of who we are, not only as Americans, but as Texans. And it's something that the Supreme Court has recognized that government is allowed to acknowledge them. Even in the public school, it's permissible. It doesn't require you to, but it's permissible for school districts to acknowledge this. And what you'll see on the screen is our Merry Christmas Texas homepage, where you can download a one-page summary on this issue, some examples of things that have happened in the past that we're trying to prevent, some guidance to school districts, and hopefully, as a result of that, we won't have to have litigation and we'll have these issues being resolved. But let's talk about how we got to this point today. I want to first introduce you to Cynthia Story, who has worked with us, myself and other folks across the state on this issue. But this issue really came to her and her community. And so Cynthia has worked with us here at the Capitol before on these issues. Cynthia, tell us about your experience and what happened to your family and your children on this issue in public school.
Thank you for having me, Jonathan. First of all, I'm the mother of 4 children. And when my oldest started in kindergarten, we had a Christmas party. And I was in charge of getting the 12-ounce red cups for the Christmas party. And they made little gingerbread men, and it was great. That's what you did. And the next year, we had a holiday party, and I couldn't have red and green, but we could have like blue and silver. And okay, and at this point, I'm a homeroom mom, and I'm a stay-at-home mom, and so I'm always real involved with things that my kids are doing. And so the 3rd year she was in school, and by this time I had 2 in the school, so I had 1 in kindergarten, 1 in 7th grade, and it was just a winter party. It was white, and it was little powdered donuts with a little carrot in it, and we made a little snowman. It was just a winter party. And then the next year, it was just a school spirit party, and people got a water bottle with the school name on it. And it was the next year that kind of changed everything for me, because up to this point I was just a homeroom mom, and I was doing what the committee had decided, and the PTA was kind of under the guidance of the administration, and I'd gone along with it. But the following year was a Be a Fred party, and that was kind of in reference to Fred the mailman, who did a great job, and it was just so far off. And I particularly, the day that the teachers had their Christmas party in the gym, I was the volunteer that came and stayed with the class and sort of taught the class so that the teacher could have time off. And they had a book in the classroom that had a variety of different Christmas stories. And so I asked the kids, okay, which ones do you want to hear? And one of them was about the birth of Jesus. And the children chose the story about the birth of Jesus, and a couple of other ones. And so I read the story, and we talked about it a little bit, and I read the other 2 stories as well. Well, that day, a friend of mine, whose daughter was also in the same class, she came over to my house, and she just wanted to thank me. Because you see, it had bothered her to see Christmas turn into a holiday, turn into winter, turn into nothing at all. And this year it was the Be a Fred party, and she said, thank you so much. And she had tears streaming in her face, and she said, Haley came home today, and told me, Mom, Miss Wally came to our school, and we had to talk about Jesus today. And, you know, this is a kid who had been told, we can't talk about that here, let's talk about this something else, and just, you know, all of these things. And I didn't realize, you know, sometimes you think you're the only one that's bothered by something. And when we talked about it, we decided, you know, this is so messed up, and why is nobody standing up? And so we went and we talked to the principal. And the principal, because see, it was all about Jesus. It's all about celebrating Christ in Christ Mass, right? And the principal said, well, you know I could have pancakes with Santa before school and make it optional, and, you know, and I do wear a Christmas sweater. I mean, this was kind of her whole, like, you know, I'd love to. And also, as kind of a background, they also have like a sing-along every year. And it used to be Christmas song sing-along, and then it was, you know, Christmas and Hanukkah and holiday, and then it was Christmas and Hanukkah and holiday and Kwanzaa. And then it was Christmas and holiday and Kwanzaa and the song We Celebrate Eid being taught to our kids, and they were required to sing. They get reprimanded if they didn't. But the thing is, we don't celebrate Eid. And it was Christmas.
Well, Cynthia, let me ask you, is Christmas a holiday? Right?
Christmas is a holiday.
All right, last time I checked. So we'll hear all this discussion about holiday, but then all of a sudden they get to Christmas and then everyone gets uncomfortable. And last time I checked, Christmas happens in winter as well, right?
Yeah.
Well, and let me ask you too, thank you for your courage and what you did to stand up for this and bring it to light and make it public. What is that like? I think a lot of times people, they think that these parents are crusaders and that we handpick someone or whatever, and then, you know, and all of a sudden that it was all planned, but that's really not how it came about. Is that right?
Well, I'll tell you what. If I had any doubt that standing up for this was the right thing to do, when my son came home one day from school, and he said, Mom, you know, I can't say the G word at school. And I'm thinking of one G word I could think of. I said, well, what's the G word, sweetheart? And he said, God. And I thought, you know what, it's time to stand up. You take the Lord out of my child's life in a place where he is 8 hours a day. And you say he can't say, I'm sorry, what? That's when I stood up and I said, you know what? And I sat down with my family, because to stand up, you might get an assault on you, because people don't like people who rock the boat. And I said, okay, let me ask you something. And I asked my 4 kids, I said, if there was something that you knew was the right thing to do, and you knew that people might not like you if you do it, or they might even throw a brick through the window, because honestly, I was met with a lot of hostility when I tried to stand up and say, can we go back to having a Christmas party? Even a holiday party. And they said, no, Mom, if it's the right thing to do, you stand up and you do it. And I talked about this issue with the kids, and I said, look, people won't understand what we're doing, and they might get mad and want to defend the teachers and the principal. I said, but this is what's going on. And by the way, the following year, when we started to stand up for everything, do you think that they had a Christmas party? No. The next year, the theme of the party was, the key is me.
Oh my God.
The school
Well,
was completely unwilling.
This is a great example of the type of hostility that we're seeing in the schools, and it is so extremely difficult, because you're not, I mean, you're an adult, you're a parent, but it's your children. And so you step in a role to where you take a stand, but then they have to be there around the administrators every day at the school. They still have to go to school there. You often are in some of the same activities with some of the other parents. We've seen it to where, frankly, the school district will engage in an effort where they try to turn the community against the individuals, and it's tragic. What we have on the screen here are some of the things that happen in Katy as well. In addition to what Cynthia mentioned, students were prohibited from bringing to school any items with the words Christmas, Christ, and Jesus, or St. Nicholas. So St. Nicholas, Santa probably wasn't be able to mention. Students prohibited from singing Christmas songs. just a long list of things here that we saw going on. And so, and it happened in other school districts. Katy was just one example. Cynthia, thank you so much for your courage and experience. This type of leadership leaves a legacy. These court cases lead to precedent, and it leads to something that typically the school administrators do not forget, and particularly your children do not forget when they see you take a stand. And so with that, let's transition to our next speaker, someone who was able to join us. I know he was Skyping, working with Oklahoma, who's working on passing their Merry Christmas law. But if you'll help me welcome to the stage State Representative Dwayne Bohack, the author of the Merry Christmas Law, and his son Reagan. Representative Bohack, I want for you to educate and enlighten our audience here just about your experience with this issue, where it started, your son's involvement, what it meant to you professionally, but also personally, to be involved in this issue.
First of all, thank you for having me today. I appreciate it, Jonathan. And thank you as well for being here. I know the day is cold and it's raining, and a better place to stay, in my view, would have been to tuck nice and neatly in bed. You didn't have to go to work. But at any rate, my name is Dwayne Bohack, and I represent Houston in the Texas legislature, West Houston in particular, out I-10, like you're going towards Katy, and out 290 like you're going towards Cypress. But anyway, let me tell you about the experience that I had with Reagan that kind of inspired me to file House Bill 308 a year ago, really right about now, I think is when we actually filed the bill. But this is my son Reagan, and at that time he was 6 years old. You want to say hi, Reagan?
Hi.
How about a round of applause for Reagan?
Listen, he was very courageous. We had a news conference this morning, and he stood right there by my side, and I was so proud to have you. You know, when you have a family member with you, it just kind of makes everything better. And he actually got up with me this morning at 5. We were in studio at 4:50 in the Fox Studios at 4:50, and we were on the air at 5:20 our time. And he was a trooper, and we were the only ones driving through downtown Austin, the only ones walking through downtown Austin, for that matter, at 4:50 in the morning. But anyway, let me tell you what inspired me. He was in the first grade, and I picked him up in December at the flagpole. I picked him up at the flagpole, which I normally do. I get out of the car, I walk up to him, and I said, well, how was your day? And he said quite excitedly that they decorated the holiday tree in class with holiday ornaments. That's what he said. I can't make that stuff up. I said, well, what word is the word holiday taking the place of or modifying? Because there's no such thing as a holiday. It doesn't exist. He's telling me in my ear it's modifying Christmas. I said, exactly. Exactly. So you decorated the Christmas tree, the holiday music. That's the word it's pointing to. It's pointing to Christmas. It's not pointing to any other holiday, because there's no holiday. It's not Easter, and it's not July 4th, and it's not Thanksgiving. There's only one holiday it's pointing to, or modifying, and that's the word Christmas. So I went into the administrative offices, and I can be sarcastic sometimes, but I have to remain Christ-like. Okay? That's the challenge, right? Does anybody else have the challenge of displaying the fruit of the Spirit all the time? I do. Right? If we're honest, we all do. And anyway, so I went in there and I sarcastically said, can anybody tell me what that Christmas tree on that counter is called, and what is the word, and what is it? And they said, well, it's a holiday tree. I said, well, what does the word holiday, I went through the same routine. They said, well, it's Christmas, that's what it means, but we can't say that around here.
Did you whisper it like that?
That's just how we're talking. See, we're all getting, Representative Bohack, shh, calm down.
You're mic'd, by the way. You realize that, right?
Huh?
You're mic'd, by the way.
Yeah.
So we got
It's not a holiday tree. It's a Christmas tree, but we really can't say that. I said, well, why not? They said, well, we're fearful of two things. I said, well, what are you fearful of? They said, well, we're fearful of lawsuits. That makes sense. I mean, education budgets are tight, and they don't want to get sued. I don't want to get sued. I'm fearful of lawsuits, right? All of us are. And which is why we do reform in the state. Different story. But at any rate, So, and I said, well, what else are you fearful of? They said, well, we're fearful of retribution from the administration of the school. That made sense, because you don't want to get fired, right? And you don't want to have a bad report put in your file. You got to feed your children. That means you got to be responsible. You have to have a job.
Would you say this is part of the problem too? You have groups like the ACLU or other entities that they talk about our side being aggressive. They invoke or instill fear into school districts because they send out letters and threaten school districts and misstate the law and do things to say, if you recognize Christmas or do things like this, we're gonna sue you. These are some things that happen in our state, right?
Yeah, that is what happened. And, I always say these ACLU folks have way too much faith for me. To believe in nothing really requires faith that they are Phi Beta Kappa in faith. They have faith in nothing. I can't see a beautiful watch or a beautiful canvas art and say, well, nothing created that. See how, and if nothing didn't create a watch, and if nothing didn't create the Mona Lisa, right? Nothingness didn't create it. Randomness doesn't create things of beauty.
Well, speaking of things of beauty, I don't know if you've seen the pictures displayed up here, but we've got, you see behind Representative Bohack, this is from the bill signing. There's Governor Perry, and Reagan, you got the pin from the bill signing, didn't you? Tell us about what that experience was about. And I mean, to be working with your dad and to be the inspiration, and you're like a hero for kids across the state. Did you have fun meeting the governor? Yeah. And did you get on television?
Yes.
Yeah. You got to meet Santa. You're like a bigger star than Santa that day.
I got to meet a bunch of Santa.
Yeah. And where's the pen? You still have the pen? Did your dad put it in a safe place?
He has it at his office.
Yeah. Well, once again, I want to say thank you, not only to Representative Dwayne Bohack, but Reagan Bohack. I mean, to have the courage of a child, and that's what we hope, isn't it? For a child to come home as a parent of a child to tell us what's happening in their school, and then for us to be able to make a difference. So tell us about the legislative process for a minute, Representative Bohack. I mean, obviously a personal issue and an important issue, but then you got to get the bill passed. Seems like a great idea, but...
It is, and to the point you were making, you have to ask yourself, are you willing to take the risk?
How much opposition did you get?
Well, it's not really about the opposition. It's about what the media is going to do to you and the rest of your political agenda.
Among the voting members.
Because you see, what they're going to do is they're going to try to make me look foolish, and try to make me look stupid, and try to make me look dumb, and then try to make all the rest of my policy irrelevant.
Well, what's interesting is a lot of people will try to make this a Republican issue. But in fact, you had bipartisan support. We had Representative Richard Raymond at a press conference with us earlier this morning as a member and representing the Democratic caucus. So fantastic, right, to have that type of bipartisan support on an important issue.
That's right, because you see, this is not really a Republican bill or a Democrat bill. It's not really an ethnic bill. It's not an age bill. It's transcendent. It's transcendent. It's really a pragmatic, common sense. It restores sanity into the. To me, it's so simple. The simple things compound the overly educated.
That's a great point. So tell us too. Great bill, passed into law, almost unanimous, and now other states are doing it. You were earlier talking with someone in Oklahoma. Is that right?
Oklahoma at 10 o'clock, so just a few short minutes ago, they just did what we did. It was kind of like listening to a replay of what we all did back when we rolled out the bill. And, going through the same talk tracks and the same rolling out the website and telling kind of the same stories, but just in a different state. And so they allowed me to participate via a Skype and telephone. But then New Jersey filed a bill last week. New Jersey, it's wonderful. So the Texas experience is truly inspiring other states to do this, because we had the courage, along with Jonathan and along with Governor Perry. Governor Perry, he deserves a big deal. Because the truth is, had Governor Perry not wanted this bill would have never gotten out of committee. Okay? We have a very, very, very constitutional-loving, God-fearing,
That's right.
family-oriented leader in Rick Perry. And let me be frank. His shoes will be very big to fill. His kind of leadership, not perfect leadership,
Right, right.
because there's no perfect parents, there's no perfect spouses, there's no perfect politicians. But that type of courageous leadership rarely comes along in a state or a country. And anyway, we were very fortunate to have had his leadership in our state for all these many years.
Absolutely. Well, and speaking of leadership, you had a great idea. I think it was your idea to invite all these Santas to confuse little kids, I guess, but you brought, no, you did a great thing. You invited all these Santas to the Capitol. And I was walking around with them, and it was like, I mean, if I had been around when Elvis was like, walking around with like, movie stars. I mean, the Santas, they were just a hit. Even Representative Isaac he wanted to jump into a picture, and all the reps and some senators wanted to get into a picture. And so that was pretty neat to have the Santas a part of it. But they talked to us, didn't they, a little bit about how they're facing some issues. Fort Worth had an issue where they didn't allow Santa, and people aren't always as as nice as they should be, and gave us some insight on the issue.
Well, you make a good point, and really, truly, walking with Santa Bill, I can't, there's no pun intended here. Santa Bill is his name, Bill French. And he's with the Lone Star. Bill, get it? We filed a bill.
Okay.
We need more Aggies at this table. So anyway, it was like walking through the Capitol with Elvis or the Beatles. It was amazing. Plus, we were at the end of the session, so it was packed. All the students were here from all across the state. There were organizations and everything that was here. Where these guys went was pretty amazing. And anyway, we knew that they were going to be there on the day that we passed that we were to argue the bill in the House floor. But we didn't know how many of them would be there. We didn't know that they would be there in their full regalia. We didn't know that they would, as we sat down to argue the bill on the House floor, they were sitting over the clock.
Yeah.
And how majestic is it? Time is the most precious commodity. And to have them sitting up there around the clock and in their full regalia like Santa Bill is today. And then when the bill passed, I want you to imagine that they had sleigh bells. And the sleigh bells, they just rang them. And in the silence of that big cavern of the House chamber, you hear these sleigh bells going off, and that's the only sound you hear is just quiet. And, it was very surreal. It was very ethereal. It was very ethereal. I wish I could bottle that moment in time, because it felt like everything just slowed down to a crawl.
Wow.
Well, I was there, and I was actually in the Senate chamber too with my children when it passed, and it's a moment I will never forget. We thank you once again for your leadership. This is the beginning of this issue, but I think we're going to continue to see more fruit and more gifts, if you will, from this issue and this law. So thank you so much for your leadership. We have with us, we're glad to have former House member and State Board of Education member Ken Mercer. You know a little bit about the public school classroom. How important is it to have a state law that very clearly outlines how these issues should take place and what the rights are? Do we need this? Are there attacks on Christmas?
Well, thank you, Jonathan. And let me open by saying, Reagan, I believe I met you last year at a religious event. It was called a Texas A&M football game. With your daddy and Jonathan, we actually had discussed some of this with me, some other things that were going on. Do you know what's going on in the schools? But let me make a brief comment to that, Jonathan. And again, I'm Ken Mercer, State Board of Education, and I have a message that ties into Jonathan's questions to our 1,200 school districts, our 7,000 campuses, and 20, almost now 5 million public school students. You know what that message is? Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah. The good news is we passed a bill that gives students and educators, Jonathan, the right to say Merry Christmas. The bad news, we had to pass a bill. We had to pass a bill to tell the far left that in a place called Texas, we believe in a document called the United States Constitution, And we believe in an amendment that says we have freedom of speech, and that's meant for everybody, including Christians and Jews. How about that?
Well, and speaking of that, people will say, oh, well, there really aren't this many examples or whatever. We just go back a few years, even at the State Board of Education. You had some people that were unelected on a review committee when they talked about how, in middle school, how we would teach about important days for major religions. They wanted to take Christmas out of a list just a couple of years ago. But you said no to that.
Yeah, I fought that one, and I got to thank Jonathan Sines and Liberty Institute and Texas Values for always being there, because we had experts who came out, and what we teach our kids is that junior high and high school in world history and geography, they know the major religions of the world. So wherever you're at, if you're in South America, the major religion is Christianity. Hey, what are the major holidays? Christmas and Easter. And if you're in Indonesia or Middle East or in Europe, in Australia, what is the major religion and holidays? Just an education thing. But one of the experts actually came back and said, there are two things, one about Christmas and one about Bethlehem, but it's a different one. But Christmas, they wanted to delete Christmas from the list of major holidays. And I think what Cynthia shared earlier, if there's no Christmas, there's no Christianity.
Yeah.
We have to have Christ.
That's right.
So, and my problem was we had been very fair, Jonathan. We'd added Diwali, the Hindu festival of lights for that major religion, Ramadan. But here they felt that they wanted to delete. Here we're trying to be fair, accommodating, and all of a sudden it was coming back. Well, you know what? While we're doing that, they wanted to delete Christmas. Can you believe that? Well, we fought that, and like Representative Bohack said, we got called religious right wing, whatever. But I don't care. We did the right thing, and we won.
Thank you, Member Mercer, for your leadership on that issue. Our last panelist, and then I'm going to talk about someone who was not able to be with us here today. Our last panelist is Justin Butterfield. He's a licensed attorney and staff attorney with Liberty Institute. Liberty Institute is the largest nonprofit religious liberty organization and legal entity in the country. Justin was a part of the drafting of this. We got his insight and guidance on this. Justin, how important is it to not only have a law, but for people to know that there are continual, constant battles in the schoolroom, and that a lot of it has to do with what's happening in the information school districts are getting?
Yeah, it's very important. We at Liberty Institute have been dealing with this issue for a long time. 10, it may be 11 years ago now, a student came to us, a second grader named Jonathan Morgan, who went to a winter party at his school in Plano Independent School District. And all the kids brought goodie bags to hand out to the other students. And he brought goodie bags with pins in the shape of candy canes and a little message attached to them how the shape of the candy cane and the colors of the candy cane represent Jesus. And he wanted to hand these out like all the other students were handing out little goodies to their students. Well, the teacher said, no, you can't hand that out. It has a religious message on it. We can't have anything religious at our winter party. And so his dad was there. All the parents came to the winter party. And his dad said, okay, well, I can maybe understand not wanting to give it out to the students. What if I give it out to the parents and let the parents decide whether they want their children to have it or not? The teacher said, no, you can't do that. You as a parent are not allowed to give religious messages to the other parents at the school. So they came to us and we said, well, in 1969, the Supreme Court said students and teachers do not shed their constitutional rights at the schoolhouse gate in a case called Tinker versus Des Moines. We thought, well, the Supreme Court said students and teachers have constitutional rights. They don't lose them because they're at school. Other things that quick courts have said is if you don't accommodate religion and instead you just engage in hostility towards particular religions like this, or towards religious expression in general, the Constitution forbids hostility towards religion. That's establishing secularism as a state religion, and that's prohibited by the Establishment Clause too. Another thing courts have said is that if you remove teaching things like Christmas or religious culture from the students, what's the point of a school to educate the students? Where does so much education come from? From the religious culture that we have. What kind of students do you get if you remove all of that cultural background from them? You get ill-educated students. So courts have pointed that out. So we thought, well, we have a Supreme Court case saying they have constitutional protections. We have courts saying that, banning religious expression is hostility towards religion is prohibited. And we have courts saying, if you do this sort of thing, you end up with poorly educated students because they don't know what their own culture is about. So we thought, well, that'll be easy. We'll present this to Plano Independent School District, and they will see the error of their ways, and they'll allow Christmas parties, and they'll allow the students to hand out messages with their own speech, even if the speech has a religious message. Well, the school district has been fighting us about this now for the past 10, 11 years. It's still going on. A couple of years ago, the school district resorted to arguing at the Fifth Circuit that, well, it's not even clear that the Constitution applies to students. No students, they don't have the mental capacity to have First Amendment rights. Now, that upset a lot of people. We got a brief supporting our position from an association that represents mentally disabled people that said, look, if this is the school's position, if this is right, if you have to have a certain mental level to be protected by the Constitution, that basically removes the protections that we as much value from all sorts of people, not just students. It removes it from anybody who doesn't have the right amount of mental capacity. So we argued that the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is a federal court of appeals that covers Texas, said yes, the Constitution does apply to students. Yes, these things are right. He does have the freedom to hand out religious messages to his students. We were right about all that. So why did the school district get it so wrong? Is because their lawyers were misinformed. They didn't want the lawsuit, so they got a lawsuit, ironically enough. But in their fear and not understanding what the law says and what the Constitution requires of them, they took this extreme hostile view towards Christmas because they did not understand. And so the great thing about the Merry Christmas bill is that it makes it clear. It doesn't really change the law. The law is protect the ability of people to celebrate Christmas, say Merry Christmas, is protected in the Constitution, by the Constitution. But what this does is it makes it clear so that they understand, look, this is what the law says. This is what you're allowed to do as a student. It sets those bright line rules so that you don't have the school districts confused about what they're allowed to do. You don't have teachers worried, if I have a Christmas party, if I say Merry Christmas, am I going to get in trouble? Am I going to get sued? Am I going to get fired? It sets those bright line rules and makes things a lot easier for the students, for the teachers, for the parents, for everybody involved.
Thank you so much, Justin, for your leadership on this issue. And by the way, Liberty Institute, how many times have y'all lost to the ACLU?
We have never lost to the ACLU.
Thank you, Justin. We're running short on time here. We have a video we want to play to wrap things up from Representative Pat Fallon, who's dealing with an issue in Frisco. He was not able to be with us, but because of his leadership in engaging his constituents on this issue, they were able to stop something, but we're not so sure it's been completely stopped yet. But I want you to get an insight on what's happening and how, because of this law, students and parents are being empowered on this issue.
State representative from North Texas got involved in an elementary school party, though he wasn't invited to it. But when he suspected the rules for the party might violate a new state law about political correctness and religious holidays, he crashed the party. Fox Sports' Brandon Dodd is in Frisco tonight with more. Brandon.
Yeah, exactly, Steve. The parents and that lawmaker are doubly upset at that party that's being planned for Nichols Elementary students. One, that it's called a winter party, and two, apparently the students will have to follow some party rules that the lawmaker says goes against a newly passed state law.
And if people have a problem and complain about it, then they can call it a holiday tree.
State Representative Pat Fallon says an angry parent asked why their child, who goes to Nichols Elementary in Frisco, won't see a Christmas tree and won't be allowed to say Merry Christmas at the school's winter party.
This has been case law for 25 and 30 years. So why are we having issues with it in all places in Frisco, Texas?
The parent forwarded the Republican an email sent out by the organizer of the school's winter party, and in it, there were 3 rules listed for the party. No reference to Christmas or any other religious holiday, no red or green or Christmas trees, and nothing that will stain the carpet.
I agree with that 3, but not 1 and 2.
Fallon co-authored HB 308, or the Merry Christmas Law. It allows students and staff at schools in Texas to say Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy Holidays. Governor Perry signed it into law earlier this year. This week, Texas Values, a conservative group, released a radio ad as a holiday reminder of the new rule.
Did you know that there's a new law in the state of Texas?
The spot is running in the 4 largest media markets in the state and closes with the voice of a child.
And remember,
It's okay to say Merry Christmas.
We're celebrating Christmas, so why can't it be a Christmas party or maybe a holiday party? But they've skipped over holiday and go to winter. That's, political correctness gone too far.
Fallon says he called the superintendent of Frisco ISD and was told the party rules were not a district policy. Then he was told by the district's PTA that kids could say Merry Christmas. But then he got a second email from a PTA member. It was a message to other party organizers that read, "Today at the PTA meeting, it was stated that they had decided to keep everything the same. She said they didn't want to offend any families, and since each family donates money, they feel this is the best policy."
It's my understanding that nothing has changed.
One parent told us the school is very diverse, but the rules don't make sense.
The kids that are used to say Christmas, they should be able to say Merry Christmas. And the one who doesn't want to say Merry Christmas, don't say it. Say it your way.
Now today the school district emailed me this response regarding those party rules. The school was unaware of this and it was not an official PTA correspondence either. There have never been any limitations on what the students wear, what they bring to share with their classmates on party days, and what greetings people exchange with each other. Steve?
All right, Brandon, the mention of money and who donates what seems a little off-putting. I'm not sure how that all fits in. It just seems odd. Let me ask you something. The district says it has a policy, but the PTA doesn't necessarily have to follow it. Is that the way you understand it? And is that the way the law is?
No, that's exactly right. The district can make that policy saying that kids are allowed to say Merry Christmas or Happy Hanukkah, whatever they wish, but the school and the PTA do have the freedom within this district to go a different way or to make different rules if they so choose. And of course, the lawmaker I spoke with today said it's one of the things he really doesn't like about this, and he is really wanting to urge the district to change that. Steve?
Okay, right on top of Frisco.
Well, Representative Pat Fallon from Frisco could not be with us. You know, there's a lot of ice up there, weather issues, and we're going to try to Skype him in, just could not pull that together. But if you want a copy of the letter that he sent to all the school districts on this issue, that's how this got the attention of the media. That's how we at least got initial stop to what's going on. We're not so sure the problem's been completely solved yet, so you may be hearing more about that. Check our website and our Facebook page to get updates on that. But this is oftentimes what happens. You'll still see them try to start moving things around. Oh, it was the PTA. Oh, we didn't know. And so we're going to work on getting to the bottom of this. And we're running a little over time. I know we had some weather issues earlier this morning, so I'm going to wrap things up. But I just want y'all to know, and I would think you agree, you know, they talk about what's offensive. I think that most Texans would agree it's offensive if there's not a place in public schools for Christmas. Yeah. So with that, I close. Thank you all for being here. And thank you to all of our panelists for being here. Santa, feel free to join us downstairs in the Legislative Conference Center. It's just down the steps to the right. We've got cookies, we've got refreshments, we've got food, we've got music. It's a great Christmas theme, a nativity scene. We got all kinds of good stuff. So please join us and Merry Christmas.